thinking about harmony, and I'm thinking about your piece that was performed at Penn State, which was just gorgeous. I mean, just the way that the way you describe it now, I don't remember if there were program notes. I didn't read any of the program notes for any of the pieces. Maybe I could have, but that was on me. But hearing you describe it, the piece makes even more sense, and just the way you kind of portray this through time, it was so gorgeous. But the harmony that you used, it was like almost like a crystal. It was like very crystalline, which I guess is the opposite of a shadow. Like it was very translucent. So I'll preface this by saying that before we started talking, you had shared with me that you have synesthesia, and that's your main tool when you work with things like harmony and orchestration, which is very tied to one another, I think. So I'm really curious about this. How when did you first realize this was something that you could work with in this way, and how do you consciously or subconsciously use this while composing?
Yeah, well, thank you for your for saying that you like my piece. I'm very happy.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually quite satisfied with that piece. I was a little bit insecure about it at first, but then when we were there, I was like, "Oh, it does work. It does work." So, yeah, I'm very happy you liked it. And yeah, synesthesia has been with me all my life to different degrees. When I was a kid, I remember having very visual experiences inside of my imagination relating to music, but it was more like in a fantasy way, you know? I suppose I was always a daydreamer when I was a kid. So music really was something that fueled my fantasy a lot. And it wasn't really until I started, I don't really remember that clearly, but when I started like playing around with my dad's keyboard, that I would spend hours and hours just playing with that keyboard and making music. I didn't have any sense of musical notation, and the sequencer didn't really have any visual aid because it was very basic. So the only way you could really know what you were making was by listening to it. So by accident, I suppose, my mind started creating these very abstract representations of the sounds in my mind. And I suppose it was just like this very natural thing to do. Like if you're writing words or a poem for some reason, and then you have to use whatever tool you have to read them out back to you, to make sense of them. And also, when I listen to music, you don't always know what kind of instrument is playing.
Right, right.
Sometimes it's just a weird sound, and my mind created the representation in an abstract way, and that's related to this notion of the abstract expressionism, which is a genre of painting that I've always been attracted to, partly because I believe it's kind of like a language I understand. By the way, I didn't really know it was kind of like a big deal or anything important until I saw an actual documentary about synesthesia on TV one time. So at that point, I didn't even know it had a name or anything. It was just the way I did it. So it's been with me ever since, and it's been my main tool to working with harmony and timbre and orchestration. Just like I suppose a painter uses his eyes to look at his painting, So it's really been there. It also helps me think about structure, like musical form, because I can more or less have a basic idea of what I want my piece to look like. So I like take a seat back and I try to imagine what the whole landscape kind of looks like. And I have these really clear ideas like dark harmonies, low notes, that sort of thing is pretty dark. High pitched notes obviously are very luminous. Different instruments for me, they have different colors. Like, for example, for me, the clarinet sounds blue for some reason. That's so weird, right?
I can see that.
I can see that too. For stringed instruments, sound green for me for some reason, and obviously depending on the range, it's more bright green or dark green. But at the same time, also chords or different harmonies have different sensation of color. Like I find like some scales or chords might have more bright colors like orange and white, and other times like it can be like very brown and dark, you know. And I suppose that's just my way of thinking, and it helps because my music is very harmony and timbre focused more than, let's say, motif related, you know.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, you're giving such perfect examples of what synesthesia is, but I realized while you were talking, like I should have probably explained what it is before I asked you the question because it feels like such a given in our world. Like, okay, we all know what this is, but
Yes, of
for
course.
but for folks who are listening who are like, what, what is
What's
synesthesia?
happening?
It's basically like when like two of your senses kind of become linked with one another. So in your case, it's like sound and visual kind of get tied together. Maybe another example could be I've never heard of this happening, but like when you eat food, you hear something, right? Like
Yeah, I've never
that could
heard of that, but I can see that happening. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. The kind of sound that texture has, you know?
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
So, I mean, what you're describing makes me think of kind of like pre-compositional tools almost. Like anytime I sit down to write a piece of music, I start visually, like with a graphic representation of what I want to make. I'm not like to the degree that you're talking about. Like I don't see colors or anything or whatever. But is that part of your process? I mean, is or does it kind of like you sit down and at a piano maybe and play through stuff and you receive this like synesthetic information that you write down and like it kind of it's like a feedback loop of some kind.
Mm. Yeah, well, process is a very interesting concept because I don't know. I don't really know. I suppose by now I should know what my process is, but I don't really know that well because it changes all the time, you know? Yeah, that's part of the problem, you know. I really wish I could write easily, but a lot of the time I'm like, how do I write this piece? So I guess we can all be quite visual to a different degree, and you know, structure, as you said, that's a one of the most important, I think, elements in music. I think great harmonies, great melodies, great textures, great orchestration, great everything. If the form doesn't work, the piece doesn't work. And
Yeah,
if it has good elements, it's kind of a shame. So I do think form is what really makes or breaks a piece, in my opinion. It's funny because a lot of the times when I'm teaching, I have my students make graphs of the piece they're going to write. Like, I think that's a good tool. It sets us in the position where we have to think structurally, you know? And I think that's very important. I also think that in my case, I really want to keep the form flexible because it's one thing to have an initial idea of what you want the form to be, but that doesn't necessarily fit with how the music is actually going to behave
right.
once you're starting writing. So in my case, I have a structural idea in my mind. I don't do a map or anything on paper. I just have the idea, have a like a basic, let's say, a sketch of a basic form, and then I start writing the music. And then when I start writing the music, I realize, oh, this is happening. Oh, the music wants to go here. Maybe this makes more sense. So I can adjust my vision of the entirety of the piece as I am writing it. And that comes from a visual representation in my
Right.
mind.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Klein, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.